Recently, I made this mute pedal because I was doing a lot of testing with changing effects around, and I had an issue when I was changing all the wires around, the amp and the guitar, everything was just buzzing, making a lot of noise, and I needed a way that I could just hit a button, silence the amp, and when I was done futzing with all of the wires, I could turn the signal back on, test the circuit, and all that kind of stuff. When I made this, I kept thinking I'm setting myself up for some future disappointment because I can't tell if it's on or off just by looking at it. So what I've done is I've added this LED, and when it's red like this, it tells me that the output is off, so it is in fact muted. And if I push the button again, it turns green, and now I know the signal is allowed to come through. So this right here is a two-color or a bicolor LED, and the ones that I have seen in the past usually have three legs like this. This is a common anode, so there's a single anode and there's two cathodes that hang off of this thing, and depending on which side I apply the voltage or the current to go through, it will light up either green or red. But I recently found a similar LED that only had two different wires. And depending on how you set the voltage on this, if it was positive on one side, negative on this, it would light up one color. If I reversed the polarity, it would light up the other color. And this wound up being a really good fit for this mute pedal that I needed to have the two different states. The issue was, since I was using one of these 3-pole double throw switches, I needed to come up with a way that I could change the polarity on this LED to make it light up either red or green. So let me walk you through what I had to do in order to get that to work. In the case where I'm using one of these 3-conductor LEDs, these can either come in the common cathode or common anode like I showed before. This one is a common cathode, so it has the single cathode and an anode on either side. So you just have to be careful and make sure that you're wiring your voltages the right way if you're going to have this thing work. Otherwise, you have everything backwards and then nothing works. All right, so we have our 9-pin, this is our 3-pole double throw switch. And two of these rows are gonna handle the audio signal in and out. So I'm gonna have my signal coming in, it's going to loop around, and this becomes my output. And in the case of the mute, these go off and terminate or go to ground. Otherwise, I might use this as an effects loop, and this would be my effects in and effects return. So ignoring that, I have these 3 remaining terminals on the switch. And depending on the type of LED that I'm using, I have to wire it up in a certain way. For the common cathode, I have my LED and I have the 3 leads coming off. I've got 2 anodes and I've got the common cathode. So in order to wire this guy up with the switch, what I normally do is, let's see, I'll take this, I'll have the positive coming through, I'll send it through a current limiting resistor, and then I'll take these 2 anode leads, and then I'll run the common cathode to ground. Now, sometimes I will put this current limiting resistor on the other side. It really just depends on space or just my mood of how I'm wiring the thing. If this were the other way around, if I was dealing with a common anode, I would essentially do the same thing. But I would actually have that as ground that time. So for the common anode, I would have my positive power supply going through the current limiting resistor, feeding both sides, and then depending on the position of the switch, it would connect to ground either for this path or for the other path, and the appropriate LED would light up. Now, when I'm dealing with these 2-color LED with just the 2 leads, I have to be a little bit more creative. So for this, there's actually two LEDs in here that are wired opposing. So if I have a positive voltage on this side and the negative voltage over here on the other side, this LED would light up. And if I reverse that, if this is positive, it would go through this upper LED branch, and then that LED would light up. I still have to have my current limiting resistors in there, but it simplifies the number of electrical connections that I have on the outside. Makes it a little bit more interesting to wire up with the switch. So I have my 3 tabs on my double throw switch here, and what I came up with is if I ran the positive voltage to one leg, I could run the negative side of the power, or ground in this case. I could run that to either or. Then I could have one resistor coming up this way. I could have another current limiting resistor down there, and I'm using these way too beefy 1/2 watt 1K resistors. That is going to feed into my bicolor LED and then go to this tab. So now, depending on what state the switch is in, if I'm connecting these 2 leads, so I have my positive voltage, it's now connected to here, so positive is coming this way. This side, I'm essentially at the 1/2 max voltage. So if this is ground and this is 9 volts, over here I'm at 4.5 volts. So 4.5 volts to 9 volts, I'm essentially running the voltage or the current through this way, and this bottom LED will light up. When this changes, and now I've got the negative over here, or the ground, now I've got 4.5 volts coming through. It'll go through my top LED, and then it'll go off to ground, so that upper LED will light up. So now I've got the same single voltage source, and I'm using a switch and a couple of resistors to get that 1/2 voltage max and this 2 lead LED to get either or, depending on the position of that switch. Let's take a look at it on the breadboard. So I have my common cathode LED in here, and I've got my single current limiting resistor. So now, depending on which leg of the LED I touch, this is my positive 9 volts. If I touch it on this side, it turns green. If I touch this other leg, it should turn red. Okay, so now I'm going positive from that leg to that common cathode, and then it goes off to ground. Clear as mud, right? All right, let's take a look at the 2 conductor bicolor LED. I'm going to remove this guy. All right, so he's in there. I have my 2 resistors set up. So this rail right there, that's at my 4.5 or my 1/2 max voltage there. And I have no idea which way this LED is plugged in here right now. There's just 2 leads, and depending on where I connect this end, okay, that's my red side there. I'm on the positive rail. When I move it down to ground or the negative rail, it turns green. So now I have just 1 voltage that I switch back and forth, and I can either get the green state or the red state. So that's what I've done, is I've used 2 resistors, the 2 conductor bicolor LED, and used the properties of the 3-pole double throw switch in this configuration to have the 2 different red and green status for that. It's a pretty simple technique, but one that I hope you guys can glean some good information out of and perhaps add this to your own effects. So instead of just having a single LED that tells you if it's on, now you have one that tells you what state it's in. All right, I will check you guys in the next one.